Hello everyone, in this video we're going to discuss JavaScript objects. Now JavaScript objects are a type of data structure that we can use in JavaScript. So similar to arrays in our previous video, we talked about how arrays can be used and how data can be added to it rather than just using a single variable to hold one data type like an integer or a string. We could use a variable to hold multiple data types and multiple different values. Now, what we're going to be discussing in this video will be objects, and they do something similar, but they're structured slightly different. So let's start off by creating our file. I'm going to call it objects.js. And now, if we go and just look at our arrays, we can see that we started off with using let ages, and we set this equal to an array. So I'm just going to copy this into my objects file just so you can compare the two of them together. So I'm just going to bring this down a couple of lines, and we're going to do something similar for our objects. So we're going to say let, and then we're also going to set it a variable name, and I'm going to call this variable myInfo, and I'm going to set the variable myInfo to two sets of curly brackets. So in the last video for our arrays we used these square brackets, but in this video we're going to use curly brackets. So you need to hold down the shift button on your keyboard and then hit the opening round curly bracket and the closing curly bracket. And similar to the square brackets in our array, all the information that we're going to use is going to go inside these curly brackets. Now, unlike arrays, we just added many different values. As you can see here, we had an age of 25, then we had another age, then we had a second age and a third age and a fourth age, and so on and so on. But with objects, we actually use this idea of a key and a value. So imagine this key, and then we put a colon, and then we use a value. Now this isn't actual syntax, but this is just here to try and illustrate what I'm talking about. So a key could be anything, right? So a key is just like another variable inside our data structure. So for example, a key could be first name, last name, age, and then the value might be Ryan Hill 25. Okay, so we're going to start off by creating a key, and that's the example that we're going to go with. We're going to start off by creating our first key, and we want to set this first name to a variable. So the variable that we're going to set it to will be a string, and that string will be Ryan. Now, normally when we want to set a value to a string or an integer, we use this equal sign, but we don't use this equal sign when we're using objects or array objects. So what we use instead is this colon. So similar up here, we have our key, we have our colon and our value, and here we have our key, then we have our colon, and then we have a value. Now we want to add a second key value pair. We call these pairs because for every key we have a value that's associated with it. So we want to put our comma here, and now we want to put last name. So we'll type in last name here, followed by a colon, and then we want to go and use a string, and we're going to set this string to Hill. Now again, after this we're going to put another colon because we want to add another key value pair, and this key is going to be called age, and we're going to set this to the age of 25. Now this is the last key value pair that we're going to use for this variable here. Remember, the variable that's going to store all this information here will be called myInfo. So when we've reached our last key value, we don't have to add a colon here. Now I'm going to get rid of this key colon value because this isn't actually valid syntax. The compiler will actually complain to us and the code will not work if we keep this in here. This was just put here to try and help you understand what each of these keys and values were. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to also get rid of this here because we don't need this because this is an array. And now we're going to console log my info. Okay, so I'm going to keep the console log, but I'm going to get rid of the ages. So now I'm going to type in my info, and now if I go and run this, I can see that I get these curly brackets with first name Ryan, last name Hill, age 25, and it's all together on one line here. Now when I define this, I put them all on separate lines, but you could do this. You could keep them all on the one line, and this is acceptable as well. So let's go and run this again, and you can see we get the exact same output. I just feel, from my point of view, that it's more readable for me as a developer if I put each of these key value pairs on different lines. It's easier for me to go back to my code and see exactly what has been set to first name and what has been set to last name. But you can have it all on one line if you wish. So similar to our arrays, we were able to pick out one element in the array and just print that. We can actually do something similar with objects, but in arrays we use these square brackets. We don't do this using objects, we actually use the dot. So place a dot after my info, and then you can see we've got some options here. Okay, so let's go and select ages. So I'm going to select age, and then I'm going to go and run my program again. And now you can see we only get 25 being displayed here. So this is great. And you can also take age away, and you could put maybe first name instead. And we can go and run this, and we can see now only Ryan is displayed. So just keep in mind, we're going to set our key value pairs. Our key can be whatever name we want, and our value can be whatever value we want. It can be integer, can be a string, could be a float or a decimal number, whatever we want. And we can access different parts of the object by using the dot followed by the key that we want to display.